Hi, everyone. I'll start with the question. How many people here believe that AI is going to take your job? No? Okay. I think I'll show you in this talk on how much more you have to do simple things with AI. So I think it resonates with the room. So that's fantastic. Cool. So I am Arjun Saksena. I'm the founder of Humanic. Humanic stands for Human Plus Machine. And today I'm going to talk about a little bit about what we are building, but it's more about, how you can apply agents or this agentic stuff that we talk about in many different areas. And I'll give you an example of what we built and what we found as an opportunity that's existed for like 25 years, ever since marketing automation has existed. So again, another question, how many of you here know about Marketo or have heard of Marketo? MailChimp, Eloqua, ActiveCampaign, the list goes on. So there's about a dozen marketing automation tools that are used that are pretty big. All of them are fairly big. Several of them are public companies. And this is used to educate and nurture people. So let's say you have whenever you sign up for any app, you get a series of emails. You almost expect that. And those series of emails are sent by a marketing automation tool. It understands who you are and starts sending you these emails at a certain cadence. So at Humanic, we are building Agentic Marketo or Agentic MailChimp. So we're using AI agents to build a marketing automation platform that has existed for 20 some years. And I'll talk about why it's called the missing marketing activation platform. So real quick, I'll just full screen this. Whenever you want to send an email, you have to make 3 simple decisions. Who to send, what to send, when to send. And marketing teams have to do this continuously and at scale. They have to take a lot of data that exists on the users and figure out these 3 questions: who to send, what to send, when to send. So in the Humanic platform, these are agents. So there is a who to send, which is your segmentation agent, which sits on top of your data warehouse or your product analytics tool, like a segment, amplitude, mix panel, whatever there is, and it automatically creates codes for you. So this is the segmentation part, which is the first step, is who am I going to send, whatever communication I want to send. The next thing is what to send. So this is where, what Meredith was talking about, the Connect APIs is awesome because ChatGPT allows you, or any LLM allows you to create content when you give it context. So the more context you give it, the better content you can generate. So because we know who we are sending to, we also know what we want these people to do. We can provide the context to create the entire sequence of emails for you. So that's the what to send. And then, what follows closely is when to send. So the big difference between existing marketing automation tools and what we are building here at Humanic is the fact that in every existing marketing automation tool, you have 2 things that you have. One is a workflow builder. You have to go into MailChimp or Marketo and say, if this happens, then do this. If somebody visits the pricing page 2 times, then send them this email. So 2 things have to be done ahead of time, which is create the workflow and also create the content of every email that is going out. In this new world, those things don't apply. We are creating emails in real time based on the data, just like Meredith showed. You have data in your data warehouse. We know that, and the email gets constructed in real time. So, as we all know, we live in an agentic economy, and this is what you can do in many, many areas of existing software today. What I just showed you is what we are focused on. on marketing automation, but agents allow you to do many of these things that are so far been not addressable because of the effort it takes, because of the inability for humans to think in beyond a certain amount of complexity. So when I say agentic, is it loading? Yeah. So let me dig into agentic a little bit for some of you who may be not that plugged in. I'm sure several people are. So the way that we think of the agentic economy is that there are the foundation models. There is OpenAI, Anthropic, Mistral, Llama. There are like a dozen foundation models. And the big difference between the big difference that's happened since 2022 is that for the last 10 years, from 2012 to 2022, it was the age of ML. And the promise of ML was that you could do all of these things that we are doing today, but you needed a lot of data. You needed to create models, and you needed to feed in a lot of data. Like if we wanted to, in a classical world, create an email with machine learning, we would need 1 million samples to be able to predict that email for a particular customer. And everybody for the last 10 years before OpenAI came out was just trying to capture all this data and saying, okay, I have data. And the only two companies that had all the data, which is Google and Facebook, did so well with YouTube and Instagram and everything else because they had all the data, they had all the models. But everybody else was struggling to just find some data and create something valuable. And it took years and years to train those models to be production ready, and they never were. So machine learning was never really worked out at scale, except for people who are vertically integrated. What OpenAI did is that they took all of the data in the world that is textually available and trained $1 billion foundation model. And that's been copied by like 12 different companies, Mistral, Anthropic. Everybody comes from DeepMind, by the way, which is Google. But there are like 500 people who know how to train these models. They've gotten, hundreds of millions of dollars and trained these models. So now for every other person in this room that is looking to build, you don't have to collect data. You can talk to an LLM and say, I want this, and it'll give it to you, give an answer that is 60, 70% there, without having to go searching for data. So that's the foundation layer. On top of that, now we are in the world of AI agents where we are programming LLMs. So back in the day, there was assembly language, and you had to write an assembly to do stuff which people forgot, and people wrote in programming languages. Now think of the OpenAI Anthropic as different chips like Intel, AMD, etc., and you're programming them. And there are 3 layers of programming depending on how you are as how close you are as a developer. If you're a developer or you want to learn, there are things like LangChain and DSPy that are very popular. Most of these come from Stanford or Berkeley, and you can really build very flexible things. That's the full code layer that allows you to program large language models that are available, for anyone to use. Next, there are low-code models or constructs like Crew AI and AutoGen AI from Microsoft, and these are the most popular ones. There are like many others that are happening. So if you're a marketer or a growth person, you can go to a low-code situation, or you can do full code. And then there are tools that are no-code tools. So Clay is one that is extremely popular, that is specifically for AI and demand gen. So if you want to run SDR, BDR sequences, Clay is fantastic. It's still a bunch of learning. It's a new skill set you need to learn to run Clay, but it's there. Similarly, there are examples like Tome for AI content, which is what I'm using today for this presentation. At Humanic, we are building AI and activation. There is Typeface, Descript, and there are a whole bunch of tools that are coming up that are in the no-code layer. So this is sort of a framework that I'm sharing, which allows you to make sense of how these things are constructed and where, depending on your technical skill set, can you start. So obviously you can start with no code, but if you get more technical, you can get into low code and then full code. And one of the things that I suggest to many people who approach me is that if you're not very comfortable with coding, hire a developer in a low-cost geo, and as a technical assistant to unblock you from figuring out how to install LangChain or how to do certain things. So you can have your personal the concept, marketing, growth, you want to implement it, but it's not great to waste a lot of time learning Python or something else. So unblock yourself by invest in yourself directly, and that's probably better than going to a university and taking like a 2-year degree in machine learning or something like that, because you've actually built something that is useful. So that's sort of the framework, and we are applying this framework for the marketing automation space. Okay, and so now when you think of agents, like this is a visual thing, like this is not code level. You can think of any problem in this new way of thinking by leveraging what LLMs do best. So in our situation, we have a brand expert, which is similar to what Meredith was showing at Canva. We have a segmentation expert, which is the who to send strategy, what to send, content, again, a little bit of when to send. So these interact with each other. These mimic a marketing team or a growth team without ego and without any hidden agendas to figure out what is the optimal thing that I can send and who can I send it to create more meaningful to really reach a goal. Like it's all tethered to a particular goal that you define for an agent. Now I'll show you exactly what an agent is. So far, so good. So the holy grail of marketing has this concept of segment of one, like how can I personalize? And with these agents, you can personalize because you have had all this data for all this time. It's just not been actionable. So that's what we're building. And we are solving 4 specific use cases. One is activation, which is free to paid; adoption, which is paid engagement; dormant, which is no activity for 30 days; and lash, which is no activity in 90 days. Providing a little bit more color on marketing automation and PLG. Most people may have heard of PLG or product-led growth, which is like free trial or freemium. Anytime you have any of these things, you're a PLG company, which is like pervasive. Today, there is no company that does not have a free trial. Very few companies only do sales-led, only do sales by demo. There's at least 20-30% of the product or something that they're selling on free trials. So if you think of this, there is acquisition, there is activation, and then there is monetization. Acquisition is everything that you do with paid and organic. Think of money you spend with Google, Facebook, LinkedIn ads to acquire customers to your website or your app. And you put in $1,000, $10,000, and Google does its thing, and people start showing up on your website. And that's sort of a solved problem. It's got its ways and means, but technically it's a huge. Everybody starts at acquisition. The activation, like if you get 100 people sign up, 95 to 98%, 98 of those people will not convert. It's an exponential decay. And it's been like this for 20, 25 years, ever since apps have existed. And that is the activation problem where people use things like Customer.io, Iterable Braze, Marketo, and that has been the missing activation piece that people know that these people had intent, they signed up, but it is not been possible to activate them at scale. And now AI allows us to do the content, the cohorting, which I explained earlier. So it's been an opportunity that has existed, but has been out of reach because of the technology not being there to do it in an efficient way. So similarly, if you are looking at agents and if you are looking at an opportunity, I'm providing you an inspiration that look for something in the world that is right there, but hasn't been possible so far, versus creating a brand new thing, which is way harder as a business. So yeah, this is the end of the conversation. One thing I'll add is that we are hosting a conference called Code Growth, which is we're bringing the best minds in growth and marketing together in September, where I'm just showing you one example of what is possible with AI agents in the marketing and growth space. We're getting a slew of people together who will talk about how to do AI and SEO, AI and influencer marketing, AI and demand gen, and a couple of really great workshops and other things. So we have a community called Code Growth, which is how do you drive growth with code, and this is a conference that we're doing next month. Cool. Now I'll switch to the demo real quick. Can you see my, yeah. So this is the Humanic platform where you have a bunch of campaigns. So the first thing that you do is that you set up your agents. So this is an example of 3 agents that are configured for this particular account. And an agent has 3 things, or actually 4 things. The model it's using, its role, the goal, the backstory, and the tasks. So this is a content expert. Sorry, I said 3, then 4, but I think it's 5. So you can select a particular LLM, and then you can define what this particular agent is supposed to do, what the backstory is, and what you want this agent to output. So these are essentially just prompts, but we are playing around with prompts in a structure. So you can do the same thing for the strategy agent, content review agent, and you can create as many agents that you need to do this. Once you've configured the agents and you've connected the data, it will go ahead and take your data and create these cohorts. This is the who to send. It divides it into multiple dimensions and says, okay, these are the most useful cohorts that you should be sending nudge campaigns to achieve your goal, which could be activation, adoption, dormant, whatever. And once we have these cohorts set up, it will automatically create, like this is a free campaign where it created 5 sequences. All of these emails are automatically generated, the entire sequence. So if I click on it, it's all of this, delays and sequences automatically generated. Everything you have to review before you send, both the emails and all the interaction, but you don't have the cold start problem, and it's all linked to a strategy. So it's, in a typical tool, you would create the content and then think about the strategy. Here, you have to first specify the strategy. I want nurture and education. And it takes that strategy, and that's the goal it's trying to meet, and creates the entire sequence. Yeah, so there's much more in the platform, but I think I hit the major points, which is the agents, how you can configure the agents, how they interact with each other to perform a workflow that typically takes you a bunch of time to do, and then continuously optimizes it as you go along. That's all I had, and I'm happy to take any questions. By default, it'll create a strategy based on the data. So when you connect the data, it divides them into micro cohorts, and it has a default setting that, in a typical thing you want to do when you do free to paid, like in a typical setup, let's say you have 100,000 free users, you run some sort of machine learning model, XGBoost, whatever, to do free to paid conversion. And that doesn't really work. And by the way, let me give you a little background. I was at Adobe. I was head of growth for Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign. So we had 400 million users. I had a 40% engineering team from machine learning and everything else. So a lot of this stuff is coming from my number of years spent at Adobe. I was also at Evernote. So we tried these things with machine learning models, and it doesn't work because the data is very sparse. It doesn't have any signal. So when you put machine learning on very low product usage, it doesn't result in anything meaningful. It's like 50-50. What we are doing is that we are doing micro conversions. We're saying you are in milestone 1. By default, we only want to nudge you to do the next milestone 2. The philosophy is we want to help you to use the product, not try and convert you, because we don't have signal. Right. So yes, so by default, that's how it's set up, but you can go in and override and change the strategy. So we are tracking, because we have at another level, if we are bringing amplitude and Marketo together. In a typical world, you would do all of this cohort analysis in amplitude, segment, mixed panel, heap, whatever you have. Then you would import these things into Marketo, Customer.io, and run campaigns, but it's disconnected. That is what I said, that's the opportunity for everyone in this room, because it's a long way from going to what it produces by default and to take it to production. That is the opportunity, for all jobs in marketing growth. But to answer your question, the way that you, stop it from hallucinating, so that's where the complex programming LLMs comes in. So what we are doing is that once it generates these things, we have evaluations that are set up at every step with certain thresholds. So if it doesn't pass a threshold of toxicity or general neutral or whatever else, it'll stop that and retry it. So that becomes like proper programming operating systems like Flow, where it produces something, you check for it, you give it a score. If it's below a score, you go back. And this process continues because there is the cohort, the campaign, the sequence, the email, the content, and then the regeneration. So now you can imagine that the number of parameters that are available, you can do evaluations on one LLM, you can have another LLM as the judge. This thing is like, an unbounded situation where finally everything has to be reviewed. So with agentic stuff, nobody, I think, is taking away anybody's job. The job is getting redefined to interacting with these agents. Because to your point, it's generative. It's not predictive. Like Google search is prescriptive. It tells you exactly the answer. Like if you go on Wikipedia, you will get exactly, because humans have written it. By definition, generative means it is probabilistic, which means that humans need to interact with it to make it, production grade. Like for anything else, we have to chunk it up. We have to take steps. So depending on the data you have, if you had the vision is that you have all the data in the world and we had high fidelity, the system can do it. Like it can take the data, like computers can do it. It can take in data and create personalized. But when you have data that is missing, faulty, etc., you'll create cohorts, what we call micro cohorts, of people that are similar. They are in the similar stage in the product. They came from the same paid promotion. So you can create what we call micro cohorts. So they could be depending on the size of your audience. Like we have a customer that has 500,000 users, but literally, if you look at if somebody hasn't responded for 90 days, they're probably not going to respond. So you could assume that of that 500,000, you just take the last 90 days and you can pretty much not do anything for the rest of them. So there are multiple ways in which you can slice and dice to make it manageable. And the second part would be at a point where you have that kind of scale, you won't be reviewing emails directly, but you will be reviewing the evaluation. So there will be all emails will be evaluated after a certain amount of test data has gone through it and you're happy with the evaluation to say, I just look at a graph. It says, is the evaluations going up? Are they coming down? At what stage do I have to? And then you do spot checking. So you would you would have to trust the evaluation system, which itself is like, quote unquote, but there's a lot of research going in, and I'm sure OpenAI and others will release these evaluation paradigms that will be trustworthy. And then most marketing and growth people will be looking at the evaluation scores and how that's performing, whether that evaluation system is hallucinating.